That was the foundation. And now critics are saying that foundation is cracking. Not exploding overnight. Not collapsing in one clean dramatic moment. But cracking slowly, visibly, and in ways that even sympathetic observers may struggle to explain forever.
Harry and Meghan Markle's book publisher over money demands. And Paula reports it's no secret need to make money. Their mortgage and security costs alone are in the millions. Yep, absolutely. But you can't drink from the same well twice. The couple Spotify and the Manada media end in the last 2 years.
The detail that has people talking most is connected to the way the Wall Street Journal discussion reportedly ended. Royal commentators have focused on the observation that if Harry ever wished to remarry, he would need permission from Prince William. That line matters because serious publications do not usually throw in a remarriage reference without a reason. That is not casual wording. That is not careless gossip. In a major article, the final line is often one of the most deliberate parts of the piece. Editors know readers remember endings. Writers know a closing line can quietly tell people what the real point was. The possibility of Harry remarrying appears in that position. Critics ask a very obvious question. Why is that even being mentioned? You do not usually write about a man needing permission to remarry unless the future of the current marriage is being discussed somewhere. You do not usually include that kind of detail around a couple that everyone close to them believes is happy, stable, secure, and thriving. That is why royal watchers treated the line as a signal. Not proof of divorce. Not confirmation that Harry and Meghan are separating. But a signal that people close enough to the story may be discussing possibilities the public has not fully been shown yet. And for anyone who has invested emotionally in the Sussex love story, that is a very uncomfortable signal. The Wall Street Journal is not a tabloid. It is not known for building stories only on gossip and emotional speculation. It is one of the most respected business and news publications in the world. So when a line like that appears, people pay attention differently. They ask what sources were saying. They left it in. They ask why the piece ended there. And they ask whether that detail reflects a conversation already happening around Harry, Meghan, and the future of their marriage. Now let us talk about what is already public. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle married in May 2018. That means they are moving closer to their 10th wedding anniversary. For most couples, that would simply be an emotional milestone. But in California, commentators argue that the 10-year mark can carry major legal and financial significance in divorce discussions. A marriage that lasts 10 years or more may be treated as a long-term marriage in certain family law contexts, which can affect support, financial obligations, and how long a court may keep power over future arrangements. That is why the clock matters. This is not only about whether the marriage feels happy. It is also about what happens if it ends after that threshold. The 10-year point can make everything more complicated, including spousal support, lifestyle arguments, financial records, asset division, and future leverage. Critics looking at the Sussex situation believe both sides understand that clock, but for very different reasons. For Meghan, that anniversary could matter in terms of financial stability, negotiation power, and long-term security. For Harry, it could make an already difficult situation even more difficult. Especially based in California, the family home was there, and any future custody dispute would likely be shaped by the legal reality of where Archie and Lilibet have been living. So when people say Harry and Meghan seem stuck, they are not only talking about emotions. They are talking about law, money, children, geography, image, pride, and consequences.
My understanding is that there are members of the family who are very aware of the fact that the marriage is problematic.
That is where commentary from Paula Froelich enters the story. She has been one of the sharper commentators tracking the Sussex situation. And the picture being discussed is not the glamorous image of a power couple thriving behind the gates of Montecito. It is the picture of two people under pressure. Pressure from the marriage. Pressure from money. Pressure from reputation. Pressure from the deals that once looked endless but now appear far less secure. The early days of the royal exit. The image being described is not building an empire. It is of a couple increasingly trapped inside the empire they promised the world they were building. Trapped in a house in Montecito. Trapped inside a brand that still needs full. Trapped with financial expectations created when the world was still fascinated by their royal breakaway. And trapped by decisions made leaving royal life. Decisions that may now be far harder to reverse than either of them expected. The money question is one of the biggest pressure points, saying Harry and Meghan are poor in the normal sense. They live in an extremely wealthy area. They have had major contracts. They have assets and access. But critics are saying something different. They are saying the financial machine that once looked huge is slowing down. The replacement income streams that were supposed to sustain their new life have either ended, disappointed, or failed to become the permanent engine they needed. The Spotify deal is gone, and it did not end quietly. It ended with Bill Simmons using the word grifters publicly, a label that stuck because it captured what many critics already believed. The couple had been paid enormous money, but in the eyes of critics, they had not delivered enough strong content to justify that level of investment. Then came the Netflix question. The Netflix partnership produced attention, but critics become the long-term content imagined. The documentary created headlines. The initial curiosity was huge. But after the first wave, the pipeline looked less powerful. Some projects were reportedly cancelled, some changed direction, some did not land with the force people expected. And the larger problem is that the public appetite for the Sussex story appears to have changed. In the early exit years, people were curious. They wanted to know what happened behind palace walls. They wanted the emotional version. They wanted the accusations, the tears, the royal secrets, the side of the story the palace would not give. But after interviews, documentaries, podcasts, memoirs, and repeated public complaints, many viewers made up their minds. The story became familiar. The shock began wearing off. And when a brand depends on revelations, every new revelation has to be stronger than the last one. That is almost impossible to maintain forever. This is why the publishing story matters so much. Paula Froelich has reported that Penguin Random House, the publisher behind Harry's memoir Spare, may be finished with the Sussexes. That is serious, because Spare was supposed to be one of the clearest signs of their post-royal earning power. The deal was widely reported at around $20 million, and the book itself sold in huge numbers. Reports often place sales at more than 6 million copies, which would be a major success for almost any author. But publishing is not only about sales. about advances, marketing, printing, distribution, promotion, and whether the book earns back the money paid up front. According to the commentary being discussed, insiders claim the deal may have been financially painful because the advance was so large. The claim is that Penguin Random House overpaid, then became frustrated by what happened after publication, including repeated questions about royalties and limited promotional effort for the paperback version. That is damaging because it goes straight to the Sussex business model. Their model has often relied on major companies paying enormous money up front for access to their story, royal titles, royal pain, royal conflict, and global attention. But if those companies decide the return is not worth the price, the next deal becomes harder. If a publisher as powerful as Penguin Random House walks away, other companies notice. That is why this is not just a publishing problem. It is a warning sign around the whole brand. Before we go deeper into the reported book proposals and divorce speculation, we have to pause on Harry himself, because beneath all the business talk is something much more personal and, honestly, much sadder.
Penguin Random House are fielding near weekly calls from the Sussex camp asking for more money. They think there are royalties, but there aren't. Penguin overpaid, and with marketing, printing, and other costs, even with millions of copies sold, they will never earn out or get royalties. Harry has a fundamental disconnect to the concept of money.
The reporting and commentary around Harry paints the picture of a man who is not thriving in the life he once presented as freedom. Multiple people discussing his current situation describe him as isolated, restless, and surrounded by a much smaller social world than the one he left behind. The detail that has hit many people hardest is the claim that Harry spends much of his time with security guards. Whether people view that as exaggeration or not, the image is powerful. Think about who Harry once was. He was one of the most popular young royals in Britain. He had military friends, polo friends, school friends, old family networks, public affection, royal structure, and a role that gave him daily purpose. He was not always happy inside that world, and nobody should pretend he was. But he had roots. He had history. He had people who knew him before the brand, before Meghan, before Exit, before the memoir, before the interviews, before so many bridges were burned. Now critics say his world looks far smaller. A beautiful house in California does not automatically create belonging. Sunshine does not replace lifelong friendships. Money does not replace purpose. Privacy does not feel like freedom if it turns into loneliness. And that is the contradiction that keeps coming back in the story. Harry said he left to find peace, but according to commentators watching him now, he does not look peaceful. said he wanted freedom, but the life he built may have created a different kind of trap. One shaped by legal reality. Children settled in California, financial pressure, media deals, and a public image that constantly needs protection. He no longer has a royal role. He no longer has military structure. His relationship with his family is deeply damaged. His friendships appear reduced. His commercial future looks uncertain, and his wife, according to critics, appears to want a future built around visibility, branding, reinvention, and cultural influence, while Harry appears to want something quieter, safer, perhaps closer to the life he once rejected. That mismatch may be one of the deepest cracks in the marriage. Because the question is not only whether Harry and Meghan love each other. The question is whether they still want the same life, or whether they ever truly wanted the same life at all. Harry wanted escape from pressure. Meghan wanted a platform bigger than the palace. Harry wanted protection from the media.
Yeah.
Meghan wanted to control and use the media. Harry wanted privacy. Meghan wanted influence. For a while, those goals could all be packaged under one beautiful word: freedom. But after 6 years, critics say those differences are harder to hide. That is why the latest conversation is so dangerous for Brand Sussex. It does not simply ask whether Harry and Meghan are happy. It asks whether the story they sold the world was sustainable in the first place. The public was told that love justified the exit. Love justified the interviews. Love justified the distance from family. Love justified the documentaries. Love justified the memoir. Love justified the cost. But if that love story is now being questioned by serious commentators and serious reporting, then everything built on top of it becomes shaky.
Diana's inheritance gone. The polo drama not going to be made. A couple, quote, wildly unhappy with goals that have diverged in a way that may be, quote, impossible to reconcile.
That brings us back to the publishing situation, because the reported end of the Penguin Random House relationship does not only affect money. It affects future storytelling power. Harry's memoir Spare was a publishing event, but according to the commentary being circulated, insiders claim the publisher was financially burned. That phrase matters. It suggests frustration, but with the relationship itself. The claim is that the massive advance, the cost of producing and marketing the book, the lack of expected paperback promotion, and royalties all created frustration behind the scenes. One publishing insider, quoted in the wider discussion, reportedly described Harry as having a fundamental disconnect with money, especially with the reality that money can run out. That is a brutal description of a 41-year-old man born into generational privilege. But critics say it captures something important about Harry's post-royal life. For most of his life, Harry lived inside systems that absorbed consequences for him. Royal structures, family offices, aides, security, public relations teams, inheritance, status, and institutional support all created the feeling that there would always be another arrangement, another solution, another cushion, another check, another person to handle the details. But in California, that old protection is gone. Deals must perform. Money must be earned. Brands must deliver. Companies must see returns. And if they do not, the doors start closing. That is why the reported Penguin Random House shift matters so deeply. It suggests another door may be closing. Meanwhile, Meghan has reportedly been connected to book proposal discussions of her own. According to the source material, one proposal involved leadership and philanthropy, while another reportedly involved a post-divorce book concept. That second claim is the one that created the most heat, because if true, it would suggest that someone inside or around Meghan's camp had already been thinking about a narrative beyond the marriage. To be clear, this remains a claim and has been denied or disputed by representatives. But commentators say even the discussion of such a proposal is explosive because it raises the question of whether Meghan has been preparing for a future story. A story she is no longer simply one half of the Sussex partnership, but the narrator of what went wrong inside it.
The other reason the divorce talk came up is the recent Wall Street Journal article. And the very last line of the Wall Street Journal article was, if Harry ever wants to get remarried again, he's going to have to ask William for permission. Now, the Wall Street Journal is not the type of publication to just throw that in. To me, it smacked they had several people saying how unhappy the couple are, how unhappy Harry is.
The reported post-divorce book proposal is the detail that has made royal commentators stop and look twice. Because if that claim is accurate, it changes the entire emotional reading of the marriage. You do not usually develop a post-divorce narrative unless, at least in some serious private way, you are imagining a life after the marriage. You do not shape the concept, prepare the pitch, approach a publisher, and let the idea move close enough to serious journalists unless something behind the scenes is already being considered. Now, Meghan's representatives have pushed back against those kinds of claims, and that matters. But critics argue the conversation itself is revealing because it suggests that the future of the Sussex marriage is no longer only being debated by outsiders. It is being discussed through the lens of business, publishing, leverage, image, and what each side may eventually want the public to believe if the partnership ever breaks down. That is why this reported book angle is so dangerous. A normal celebrity divorce rumor might come and go, but a possible book proposal is different. Books are not impulsive. Books require structure. Books require positioning. Books require a version of events. And if the topic is divorce, then the person shaping that book is not just telling a story. They are preparing a record. Critics say this is where Meghan's strategy becomes visible. They argue she has always understood narrative power, public perception, and the value of telling her side before someone else defines it. Supporters would call that preparation. Critics call it calculation. But either way, it puts the marriage under a different kind of spotlight, because once the idea of a post-marriage story enters the conversation, every public appearance starts being read differently.
The couple's goals have quietly diverged. Harry wants action, Meghan wants scale, visibility, and reinvention. She would buy it to life. Harry craves.
But here is the complication that commentators say makes the entire situation even more difficult. If Meghan wrote a book right now, while still married to Harry, any warm or protective language about him could potentially become a problem later if the marriage ended badly. If she presented the relationship as loving, stable, respectful, and healthy in print, then Harry's legal team could one day point back to her own words. Every generous sentence could become evidence. Every soft paragraph could be used to question a harsher future narrative. That is why critics argue the timing is impossible. A book written during the marriage would need to, but a book written after divorce could attack the brand. Those are two completely different products. One sells unity. The other sells collapse. One keeps the Sussex image alive. The other profits from explaining why that image failed. And that is where the reported divorce book becomes so fascinating. The version critics imagine, the version where Harry is blamed, where the royal family is blamed, where diaries and private memories become part of a new story, cannot truly work while the marriage still needs to be publicly defended. That kind of book only becomes commercially powerful after the marriage is already over. So she waits. Harry waits. The lawyers wait. The publishers watch. The media watches. And the clock keeps moving toward the 10-year California milestone, with all the legal and financial complications that could come with it. That is why the remarriage line from the Wall Street Journal hit with such force. One line at the end of a serious source piece did what hundreds of online comments could not do. It made the possibility of a future outside the marriage feel discussable in mainstream conversation. Not proven, not confirmed, but discussable. And once a marriage enters that zone, especially a marriage that has been sold as the emotional foundation of an entire brand, every detail begins to carry more weight. The pattern of burned bridges around the Sussex commercial history is important here because the publishing tension does not exist by itself. It fits into a larger pattern. The Spotify deal arrived with huge excitement and major money attached. It was reportedly worth dollars, and the expectation was that Harry and Meghan would become major voices in the podcasting world. But by the time it ended, the output was widely criticized as thin, limited, and not enough for the size of the deal. Then Bill Simmons publicly used the word grifters, and that label stuck like glue. Then came Netflix. Documentary made noise, yes, but critics argued it was long, repetitive, and dependent on the same a couple had already shared elsewhere. Other projects did not impact people expected. Some were reportedly cancelled or changed. The huge post-royal media empire began looking less like a permanent empire and more like a shrinking set of opportunities. Then there were speaking fees. In the early years after the royal exit were still fresh. They were still fascinating. Companies, audiences wanted the inside story. Their names could sell tickets and headlines. But novelty does not last forever. Once the same message is repeated too many times, curiosity becomes fatigue. And critics say that is exactly what happened to the Sussex brand. The staff turnover story adds another layer. Reports and commentary around the Sussex household have long focused on domestic staffing issues, including nanny arrangements and the difficulty of keeping people in certain roles. Critics argue this suggests instability inside the home. Supporters say wealthy households often have complicated schedules, high standards, and demanding needs, especially with young children and security concerns. But the repeated discussion around staff turnover has followed Harry and Meghan from royal life to California, and critics believe patterns that travel across different homes and different countries cannot be ignored. The source material discusses claims about multiple nannies and demanding work expectations, including long hours, language skills, swimming ability, and child safety training. On paper, some of those requirements may sound reasonable for a wealthy, high-profile household, but critics say the broader picture suggests a difficult environment to work in. Word travels in professional domestic staffing circles, and when a household becomes known as challenging, filling roles becomes harder, no matter how attractive the salary may be.
The plan for the post-divorce book was to not only throw the British royal family under the bus, but to throw Harry under the bus too. If she writes the book, because we know she's got the secret diaries, she's going to have to be nice about him, whereas the plan for the post-divorce book was to throw the British royal family under the bus. How does she then, during the divorce battle, say, oh no, he was actually a really bad husband, he didn't support me, because his legal team will be able to say, well, no, sorry, here on page 155, you said Harry was great.
This is not a completely new conversation. Critics trace it back to Kensington Palace, then to Frogmore Cottage, and then to the early period after Archie's birth in 2019. The source material references claims that 3 separate nannies came and went within 6 weeks after Archie was born. Supporters would say newborn life is stressful, every household is different, and outsiders should be careful about drawing conclusions from staffing changes, a pattern that appears again and again across years, homes, and staff groups looks less like coincidence and more like a signal. And then there is Harry's responsibility in all of this. It would be too simple to cast Harry only as a passive figure swept along by Meghan's choices. He is an adult. He made decisions. Major decisions. Life-changing decisions. He chose interviews. He chose the memoir. He chose California. He chose to settle his children there. He chose to escalate conflicts with his family again and again. And some of those choices now look, from the outside, extremely costly. One of the biggest choices was establishing Archie and Lilibet in California. Commentators argue that from Harry's perspective, that decision may have been strategically disastrous. Because once young children are settled in California, any future attempt to relocate them to the United Kingdom becomes legally complicated. California family law would likely treat the children's established home and routine as central factors. Without Meghan's agreement, critics argue, Harry would have very little chance of simply taking them back to Britain to rebuild a life near his family. That means Harry may have handed Meghan enormous leverage without fully understanding what he was doing. He left the royal system to gain freedom, but by rooting his children in California, he may have limited his own future freedom in the most important area of all, fatherhood. And if the marriage ever becomes legally contested, that decision could shape everything. The irony is painful. Harry spent years speaking about feeling trapped inside the royal institution. Yet critics now argue he may be trapped in California, not by palace rules, but by family law, custody realities, finances, public pride, and the emotional impossibility of leaving his children behind.
Harry, you can't preach about how you're giving your children space out of the public eye. Has just posted another picture of them, photoshopped to sell a candle named after them. So you can't preach when you're doing the exact thing you claim to be so bad.
He also chose to keep escalating the conflict with his family when he had chances to soften it. Spare was one of those choices. The memoir was deeply personal, intensely damaging, and filled with details that made reconciliation harder. Harry chose to publish stories about King Charles, Prince William, Catherine, and private family moments that many people believed should never have been shared publicly. He chose the television interviews. He chose the media tours. He chose to place his pain into the marketplace. Supporters say he had the right to tell his truth after years of feeling silenced. Critics say he confused truth with revenge, and then wondered why trust disappeared. Paula Froelich has been sharp on this point. Her argument, as reflected in the source material is that whenever Harry gets an opportunity